at some point during every artist's education, they perform a color wheel. So this is your color wheel that we're going to do. And you may have done one before in the past, but we're going to do one again just so that I'm sure that everyone's on the same page as far as color mixing. So we're going to start off with the 3 primary colors. So the colors that are primaries are colors that cannot be mixed. They're really the parent colors of all the other colors. So that would be yellow, red, and blue. And I do recommend using a different brush for each one and then keeping that brush somewhere where it's not going to get too dry. You might even want to have a cup of water where you can leave it to soak while you're doing the others. I just wanted to change the angle here so you can actually see how I'm laying down the brush. So there is a specific way to hold a brush, and it's similar to a pencil, but you hold it way far back, so almost towards the end of the handle. And I just also want to point out when you are dipping into the paint that you only want to dip a little bit. You never want to go into the metal part, which is called a ferrule. You want to leave that alone. So just dip on the hair and preferably not more than halfway on the hair itself. And you can see what I'm actually doing here is short little strokes. So it's like I'm dabbing the paint on in short little strokes there. And I will twist my brush and drag it sideways to get it to fill the shape. And it is important that you leave no white. What's not important though is it doesn't have to be perfect. This is not a coloring contest where you have to stay exactly within the lines. If it's a little bit out of bounds, then that's okay. So here's my third brush, the red brush. And I'm using a little bit of a fatter brush here. And you can see I'm changing the angle of the brush, and I'll twist the brush to make it work. But again, I'm using short strokes here, and I'm just flicking on the paint. So little short flicks with my brush. Again, my hand is almost all the way to the back of the handle. And this is something I'd like you to try too. So once you have those basic primaries in place, we're going to move on to some of the secondary colors. Secondary is kind of like what the word implies. It means taking 2 of the primaries and mixing them together. So in this case, I'm taking yellow and I'm adding just a dot of red. You have to be careful. Red is a strong color. A little bit of red goes a long way. And what you want to get here is kind of a golden color, kind of similar to what you'd see in an egg yolk. So like a yellow-orange here, or true yellow-orange, not too red. Because you're still going to have to hit up the orange and then red-orange as well. So the cool thing about this color wheel is it tells you pretty much exactly where to place which color. So it's a guide for you. Now I added a little bit more red to that yellow-orange mixture on my palette, and I did that using a palette knife. And I'm putting that into the orange square. So make sure it's a true orange, not too yellow, not too red. And you have to also make sure that you can go more red for the red-orange and still it looks like orange and not red. All right, so that red-orange really needs to be right in between an orange and a red, the combination of the two. And you can see when it's sandwiched in between the orange and the red that it is indeed a different color. I went ahead and worked off camera to get the other colors, but I do want to tell you for the red violet, it's just a drop of blue in there and it kind of turns to a cranberry type color. There does need to be a distinction between the red violet, the violets, and the blue violet. And you can see it registering on the camera on the screen. When you get to the greens, there also needs to be a big shift. So there's a blue-green, the green, and then the yellow-green. That yellow-green needs to be like a lime, very electric yellow-green. So tons of yellow, just a tiny bit of blue. So I am taking a little bit of yellow and I'm going to mix it with black, and it's just a little bit of black. So we are now moving into shades. So tints are one color plus white. A shade is one color plus black. So for the shades, I don't want you to get carried away with the black. I want you to use it sparingly. So really just a tiny bit of black mixed with the color itself. So I'm mixing yellow and black, and look at that color it's making. Yeah, it might be a little bit unexpected, right? It's kind of a greenish color, right? And when we talk about black, you should understand that black is a color that you can actually mix. If you have pure pigment, you can make your own black. And black has a lot of blue in it. So black can be made from the three primaries, the red, the yellow, and blue. It has to be in the right combination and the right percentage, the right ratio, but there's a lot of blue in black. So whenever you add black to a color, it can have a blue influence if there's a lot of blue in that black. So in this case, that's the color we're getting. By the way, on this kind of roadmap for you, it just says Y and black. That stands for yellow and black. I'm not writing out the whole word there. That means for the next color on the color wheel, it's yellow, orange, and black. So you'd have to add a drop of red to that mixture, or just make a new batch with yellow, a little drop of red, and black. So I skipped ahead here to show you what red and black looks like. And it's kind of surprising because it looks a lot like red violet. And it's because, again, there's blue in the black. So when you add red and blue together, you're going to get a violet mix. So you should be doing this from the three primaries and not use any other colors that you have in your kit. So you're just using those three primary colors, yellow, red, and blue, and mixing those together to get these interesting array of colors. And you guys have probably noticed there's a lot of browns that happen when you add black. It's actually, those are great colors that you want to use from time to time. You can see that the yellow plus black is a different hue than the yellow orange plus black. They start getting more and more brown as it moves into the reds, taking on that kind of reddish hue. And the violets tend to look quite similar, so you just make sure that the ratio is correct, that it's really red violet, and you're adding a drop of black to that. The blue plus black will look kind of like a midnight blue. Your blue and green can be like a dark green value or hue. Yellow, green, and black should look really close to the yellow plus black. So you can see that you are adding just a smidge of black to influence the colors. If you add too much black, you're not going to be able to see the temperature of the color on there, and you want the temperature to read. You can see on my palette that I've started to mix some of those tints. So when you mix a tint, it's a lot of whites and a little bit of color. So kind of the flip-flop, like the opposite of the shades. I started mixing these and painting them in off camera. In fact, I'm doing that entire middle center ring off camera. But you can see the idea. You take that main color, yellow or yellow-orange or whatever the color it says, and then you add a lot of white. So you might want to have separate piles of white and then just add a little bit of color to it. Just be careful, you don't want to waste paint because there's no way to really save it, especially if you don't have an extra container. So here's what it looks like in its completion. You can tell the inner ring should look like pastel colors. So pinks and peaches, lavender and powder blue, those kind of colors. When you're done, you're going to go ahead and take a photograph and submit that in Google Classroom unless you are finishing it up in person, and in that case you don't need to.